Hello and welcome to episode 99 of the Green Outdoors Podcast. My name's Kyle.
I'm AJ.
I'm Ryan.
If you are just listening to this podcast and not visually seeing it, you're not going to be able to see our next guest, which is a shame for you because he's got a real nice shirt on today. It's well pressed. It's well ready. We've got Mason from Nosler on. Mason, what is your title at Nosler?
I am the senior marketing manager here at Nosler.
Okay. How long have you been in your position?
I've been here for just over 12 years. Just hit my 12-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah, pretty good.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, in this day and age, it's especially in this industry, it seems like people bounce around a lot. What is it that has kept you at Nosler as long as you've been there? Like, what stands out to you?
Oh, there's a lot of things. Definitely it's just awesome working for, family-owned company, small family-owned company. We know everybody. And it's just a great atmosphere. They take really good care of us, and I love hunting and shooting, so it really doesn't feel like work all that much. I just get to come and talk to people about what I love to do. We got taxidermy on the walls. We just talk about guns and hunting and shooting all day long. I mean, why would I ever leave?
Yeah, I that's kind of the point I was getting at
Makes
too.
sense.
For those of you who don't know the Nosler brand, which probably isn't very many of you, but the Nosler brand for me, especially like growing up and seeing it, it was always like the super high end one that one day I'll be able to attain. You know what I mean? Like as a kid, that was like the thing of it. And you guys have really stamped yourselves as a brand as like the top of the line. We are the best. If you're looking for ammunition, we are the best. Centerfire rifle, we are the best. And obviously, you guys have really broken into the silencer or the suppressor market as well. And that's been really interesting. I heard something the other day that there was a guy talking, and I forgot what country it was from. But when he was talking, he said that in his country, getting a suppressor is super easy. You can go to the corner drugstore and get a suppressor. Getting the gun is difficult. And it's like vice versa. Obviously, in the United States, it's much easier to get a firearm, but it's what a pain it is to get a suppressor. So tell me a little bit about your suppressors, why they stand out, and also I want to know about the process so people that are interested in why you would get them. And like what the process is to get one. One of the points I wanted to make on that though is a lot of people are like, why do you need a suppressor? It's like, well, when I deer hunt, I absolutely hate to have headphones on. I absolutely hate it. I want to hear everything. I want to do
I don't know how people do it. There's people who do it religiously, and I have never.
I don't feel like I'm in the woods if I have like earbuds in or something like that. And even like the walkers, like the electronic ones, they're great, and if you're going to go with one, I think that's the best one. But it's still not the same. I feel impaired.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And whereas a suppressor makes it so you can shoot out of a blind without going deaf. And that's a great thing. And it just seems like a safety thing.
Yeah.
And for a safety thing to be so difficult to get. But talk to us a little bit about your silencers or your suppressors. I should quit calling it. I'm going to get beat up for calling it silencer.
Yeah, that's common. I mean, they're interchangeable. Yeah, suppressor, silencer. Everybody knows what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm sure the terminology police will be all over you. But
Good.
yeah, suppressors. So, and I will admit, I am not the most knowledgeable like suppressor guy, but I've certainly learned a lot over the last, couple years as we've been developing and introducing our line. And yeah, I'm with you. Like I was one of those guys that was like, yeah, it's cool, but why would I need one? Like what am I going to do? But now I'm a full on convert. I mean, being able to experience using them at the range and in the field, I mean, it makes such a huge difference. And you're right, it's your hearing protection. I'm the same way. Like I hunt and shoot enough that you've got to wear hearing protection all the time, like no matter what, and even in the field. And especially for hunting with kids and just new hunters and shooters, like that muzzle blast, not only, is it damaging to your hearing, but it's just, it's a big part of recoil and like what startles people and makes people flinch, that kind of thing. And
yeah, especially kids. I mean, the noise is what scares a kid.
Yeah.
You push a kid, no big deal. You scream at them, they get all worked up.
Yeah. And I'm with you, I wear muffs. when electronic muffs when I'm hunting sometimes, but I don't like it, but it's just kind of a necessary evil, and you get all that wind noise and like you said, it feels kind of claustrophobic. Like you feel
Sure.
like you're not really able to, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know what's going on around me. Whereas you put your hearing protection on the muzzle of your firearm and all of those issues just go away,
Yeah.
And so from the noise mitigation to the recoil reduction, I mean, just everything about it makes the shooting experience so much more pleasant. It's really unfortunate that we're kind of stuck with these laws that make it a little bit more of a hassle to get one. Now, granted, it's not, that big a deal. Everything these days requires some paperwork and waiting for something,
Yeah.
but you're right. There are, a lot of foreign countries. Yeah, you can buy them at the hardware store. It's just an accessory, and sure, that's the way it should be here, but who knows if we'll ever get there.
So, what is the process right now for people if they wanted to order one?
So right now, if you wanted to get a Nosler suppressor, the place to start is with your local dealer. So you need to find a dealer who has the right license and SOT so that they can deal in class 3, suppressors and class 3 firearms. And so they need to have the right paperwork on their end so that they can handle it. And then it's kind of odd because you start out by buying the suppressor, but then you got to wait. So you would think you would like apply for your tax stamp, and the last thing would be like buy it when you get approved. Well, actually, you got to buy it first.
Not a bad deal for you guys though. I mean,
well, it is and it isn't. It's kind of tough on dealers when you think about it because it has to go through a dealer, and so you're not buying it direct from Nosler. The dealer's going to order it from us, but then they end up having to sit on that inventory for the time it takes for that person to get approved. So yeah, it's not the best for them, but there's ways around it. So you purchase your suppressor, and then you just decide, do you want to get your tax stamp as an individual or as a trust? So that's one thing you can do, especially if you have kids. You can basically file a trust, and the trust will get the tax stamp.
And what is the tax stamp? What does that mean?
So the tax stamp is actually what you have to own the suppressor. And when I say tax stamp, that's literally like we're talking like Boston Tea Party, like stamp tax, like a physical like stamp that the government puts on something to show that you paid your tax, and so now it's just a piece of paper. But it's just funny, it's like it's really old like nomenclature, and like this law is from the early 1900s, and so it's still called a tax stamp. And the funny thing is so that costs $200, right? But when the law was enacted, the thought, at that time, $200 seemed like no one would ever do that. No one's ever going to pay the $200 to own one of these things because it's just so expensive. Whereas now, $200 is like going out to dinner with your wife and kids, like it's just
inflation did us a solid. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So luckily the charges never changed, and so you file for your tax stamp, pay your $200, and then you just wait. And so fortunately they've brought online the e-filing system, which is supposed to speed things up as far as just the time it takes to submit the paperwork and then get the approval. It certainly makes it a lot easier to submit. You're not, filling out paperwork and physically mailing it in. You do it online. You have to submit fingerprints, things like that, and then you end up waiting. And then when the ATF approves your tax stamp, then you're good to go, good to own that suppressor, and then you can go pick it up and legally own and possess it. And then, most states you can hunt with them and own them. There are a few states you still can't own suppressors.
You can hear the founding fathers just rolling around. Rocks are falling off Mount Rushmore. They're all upset about this.
It's funny. It probably wasn't a thing at that time. Like they'd see that invention and be thoroughly impressed with how it works. Wow, you guys, you don't even hear this thing now.
Yeah, you're gonna be super bummed when you find out what we did tax wise on this.
Yeah. So
don't be proud yet.
Actually, Teddy Roosevelt was a big fan of suppressors. He owned suppressed firearms. So they were actually fairly, I don't know about common, but they've been around a lot longer than people think.
Yeah. talk to me a little bit about like the pricing and what you look for. And I would like to note too, on the Nosler website, you can go on there and there's a dealer search. So if you're looking for a suppressor, go to the Nosler website. You can look at their suppressors. Most of them are in the neighborhood of about $1,000. And then you can pick out different colors, you can pick out different sizes, and you'll look on your firearm, and you can look it up too, your firearm, and find out what threading it is. And odds are it's like one of the 3 main ones, and then you'll be able to buy that suppressor that matches up with it, plug it in, get the right color, and you're pretty much good to go. But there is something on the website where you can go to and see where the local dealers are, and they're spread out everywhere. I mean, we have like 4 or 5 here near us.
Yeah.
That have them.
Yep. Yeah. There's more and more dealers that carry them. I mean, it's becoming more and more common firearm accessory, and it's just going to continue that way.
How much of like your company's sales like would you attribute to suppressors?
Oh, very, very small. Very
like
small.
5%, 1%, somewhere there.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tiny percentage. It's very new for us. And so it's just a tiny little bit. So it's rounding out the whole, spectrum of thing. We want to be a complete shooting sports company, offer more than just bullets and ammo. And so suppressors, rifles, those are all natural extensions of what we do. And so it's just a way of broadening our reach and being able to offer our Nosler level of quality across a broader range of shooting sports products.
Yeah. One of the, and again, it's like that stamp is like when you see the Nosler thing on it, and I stand by this too, is like it carries a certain level of quality. It's like, there's like certain brands in cars, they say like Ferraris, and then in this space, especially the ammunition, it's like that's the one. If you can find that at your store, you're comparing. And especially I tell people this all the time, is like when it comes to a hunting gun, how many bullets do you really shoot?
Yeah.
The life of it, once you get it sighted in, and then you're double checking it every year. But at the end of the day, a lot of people don't go through more than a box or 2 of ammunition a year. And then but if you complain about the price, it's like, well, to have the absolute best, to have the most certainty in like what you're doing is going to be consistent, to have the most certainty that your patterns are going to be consistent, to have the most certainty that that you're actually going to be accurate, it's worth it to get the best.
Yeah,
I truly believe that.
Absolutely. We really think about it. You're hunting with the bullet. Like the bullet is really what
It's
you're
everything.
using to like kill the animal, and so like that's like the most critical piece of the whole system. So once you spend the most in investing in that so that it's reliable and it's going to perform, guys will have no problem dropping thousands of dollars on rifles and optics, and which is awesome. They're fun, and like I mean, there's nothing better than going and buying a new rifle, but you're not going to put cheap gas in your Ferrari. Don't put low grade ammo in your high end rifle, because you're not going to get the full performance out of that whole system of that optic and that rifle unless you're putting good ammunition and good bullets in that to get the accuracy and also the terminal performance that you want, that's going to give you that reliability and that guarantee when you're out in the woods.
100%. I make the joke all the time, but I showed my niece, I'm going over guns with her. She's 10, so she's getting to that age, and I'm explaining how they work. And I go, look at this entire gun here. You always have to treat it like it's loaded. You always have to point it in a safe direction. But at the same time, all this is a tube with a little poker at the end. And that's how I described it. I said everything that you need to be concerned about is in this, the bullet, because that's where all the magic happens. I mean, realistically, a gun is just a pin and a tube and a trigger. You treat it like it's loaded all the time, but at the same time, it's like the bullet is the most important part. And that's why it's like, again, if you're only putting a box or 2 through your gun a year, buy the best, man. Don't risk it.
Even a box a year, you got it. That's still that's a decent amount.
If your sight's off.
Way
off.
Or for your average person who, like in Michigan, there's a lot of guys who they go hunting once a year, and it's for opening weekend of deer. How many rounds are you really putting out there? So getting that is a decent investment,
right?
For that one time a year you hunt.
100%. I was looking into the backstory of Nosler and how it started, And what we're talking about here is exactly the frustration that led to the company being founded in the first place. So in 1946, that was when the moose hunt, the famous moose hunt that happened, that the founder was out on a moose hunt, and he actually he shot a moose, and it didn't kill it, and it was a great shot. And it bothered him so much on the way home, he was stewing on it, that he got home and he was like, I'm going to invent a bullet that makes sense then. And that's how the partition was started.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, you think about
I love that.
like what it took in 1946 to like go to BC. You know, it's not like today where you're going to hop on the freeway, because those didn't exist, and drive up there at 80 miles an hour, you know, and that was a major adventure. It was an expedition to get up there. And so you're right.
Damn
John A.
bullet
Nosler,
doesn't work.
yeah. So you spent all that time and energy, and so Big John, he bought himself a new rifle. This was his first, you know, he'd hunted deer here in Oregon, but this was like his big, you know, big game hunting adventure. And so he bought himself a 300 Magnum, which we call the 300 H&H, and took it on a moose hunt up there. And yeah, he came across a moose at really close range, and that moose been rolling in the mud. So he had a bunch of mud caked in the hair on his hide, and he shot that moose, and it didn't go down. And you know, he thought, he's like, I got this big powerful rifle, I'm going to shoot him one shot, he's going to tip over, and you know, away we go. But he did end up killing it, but it took about 5 or 6 shots, and he was wondering, you know, what is going wrong here. He's just frustrated, like, why is my rifle not working? Well, when he skinned out the moose, he realized that the bullets were coming apart on that thick hide, and then the heavy muscle and bone. Those simple cup and core bullets of the day, which are similar to like a target bullet today, just could not hold up to the velocity of that 300 Magnum at that short range.
So it's disintegrating and not getting to the vitals.
Exactly, that the bullet was coming apart, and so there wasn't any one piece of that bullet left over with enough weight and enough structural integrity to penetrate deep into the vitals through that shoulder and give a quick clean kill. You know, and those bullets worked fine in slower cartridges. You know, guys are hunting with 30-30s and 30-40 Krag, you know, relatively mild cartridges. Had that moose been at 300 yards, it might have worked fine, and we might not even be having this conversation, you know, but because he was close and those bullets came apart, he was so frustrated. He thought, there's got to be a way to build a bullet that's going to perform, whether it's at close range and high velocity, or it's a little further out and it's slowed down a bit. And so on his way home from that trip, he just started pondering and started thinking. He was a tinkerer. He was only a high school graduate. He was not an engineer by training, but he was like an engineer just by passion.
I love it.
And so he just loved fixing things. He loved trucks and cars and working on engines and just figuring out how to fix things. And so he came up with the idea for the partition bullet. And the reason it's called a partition bullet is it's got a solid copper partition running through the middle of it horizontally, dividing the core into separate front and rear lead cores. And so the purpose of that is that bullet is that front lead core is gonna expand on impact, because you need a bullet to expand.
You want
to
the
transfer
mushroom
energy, and create a wider wound channel. But that partition is gonna protect that rear lead core, so that bullet's never gonna lose more than about 40% of its weight. It's always going to hold on to that rear lead core, and that's going to drive through, whether it's bone, muscle, hide, whatever it is, that's going to drive through and get into the vitals to where you're going to do the damage necessary to give a quick, clean, ethical kill. And that was the idea. And so he came home and he built himself a lathe out of a truck axle in his shop in Ashland, Oregon. And he started lathe turning bullets one at a time. He got some copper tubing and he pressed in the partition, and then he was able to press in the lead cores and then lathe turn the nose so that, you know, there's the proper shape and proper diameter. And so he made a batch, and he went out and he shot them at the range, and they were decently accurate, which I think he was surprised by, just that he was able to pull it off. And so then he made some more, and the next year himself and a buddy went back to British Columbia with his Nosler partition bullets. This time, they purposely got as close as they could to the moose to really try and do like a stress test on those bullets. And they killed 2 moose with 2 shots, and the bullets performed the way he had designed them to, and hoped and expected that they would. And so it was a success, and he came home and started making bullets in his garage and selling them through the mail, through mail order. He had took out an ad in American Rifleman, and you could mail away for some Nosler partition bullets. And so 1948, the Nosler Partition Bullet Company was formed.
It reminds me of a story. My dad, we apparently, before I was born, my mom and him had a Christmas tree, and it fell over in the middle of the night. And they had a real tree with a bunch of ornaments that were like heirlooms and stuff like that. And it pissed him off about the same way that moose did him. And then he went to work, and he works on a lathe. He's, CNC. And he made the most indestructible Christmas tree stand that there. It weighs about 40 pounds, but it's metal. And they sell them at Christmas stores. So it's kind of funny that the best inventions are often from someone really smart getting irritated.
Yeah, it's the American dream, like build a better mousetrap, right? You just identify a problem and find a way to solve it, and it's awesome.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here for a second.
About my dad's Christmas tree stand?
No, just about us speaking about a bullet to someone who doesn't understand hunting. We're talking about it going through the flesh and the bone and the vitals and everything like that. That can sound pretty rough to someone who doesn't know anything about this, but explaining the importance of designing, like you said it a few times, the ethical kill, designing a bullet that makes it as fast as possible, because we've said it 100 times, what hunters do is the cleanest, fastest way that animal will ever go out.
Right.
Trust isn't built in a day. It's built over time. The early hours and the late nights. It's built by doing the work and pushing the limits every day. Because the promises we make are the promises we were built to keep.
The Greenway Outdoors is brought to you by Ram Trucks, built to serve. Motor Trend's Truck of the Year for the 3rd year in a row. And by Bass Pro Shop and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Tracker Boats, fish the finest. And by these other fine sponsors.
Right. That's not too different than what I said in an actual episode. So we just did our moose hunt, and we were successful. We haven't talked about it much on this podcast, simply because we're kind of holding that along with our big announcement that's going to be coming out soon. We've been kind of holding the data to it tight, but I held up a bullet, and I'm looking at this behemoth animal, this moose, and I'm holding up this little bullet, and I said, it's so strange to think that something this small can cause so much damage. And the moose I shot was dead I think it was dead before it hit the ground. And I said, it's so startling that this happens. But that's kind of the point, too, is like we started out by talking about, you only get this many days to hunt. You only use this much ammo per year. You might as well buy the best. But at the same time, that's a great point, Ryan, is like the whole point of it is like he could have lost that moose if he didn't get pop the other 4 shots off. And there's plenty of animals that are lost that if people used better ammunition, it would greatly impact the chances that would go up that they would actually have a clean, healthy harvest. Talking about the bullet as well, going through. So the partition is 2 parts. The first part, mushrooms. So that opens up, and you did a good job of explaining this, but I'm just reiterating for people that might not understand exactly what bullets are or what they do. But the 2 parts, it opened up. The first one would mushroom. Not disintegrate, but mushroom, which would create an open wound channel that would be a little bit bigger. And then behind that would push through, holding the velocity still, would be the copper part that would continue to shove through and hold its shape so it could penetrate deep. So the first step is to open everything up, and the second one is to push all the way through so that it's going through those vitals, going through the bone, going through whatever it has to in order to make the quicker, ethical, better kill. Would that be a good way of explaining it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The way I like to describe it real simply is like think about throwing a snowball at a window. If you have like really dry, light snow and you can't really pack that snowball very well, you're going to throw it and it's going to hit that window and it's just going to poof. It's just going to disintegrate, right?
Okay.
That's a good
Think
one.
about
I
if
like
you had
that
like
one.
really like wet, heavy snow and you really pack that ball down tight, make that ball really hard, it's going to
Cops are
punch
getting
you.
called. Cops are getting
Right.
called. Yeah.
Somebody's in trouble. Mom's going to be really mad. Like it's going to break that window. And that's because that is able that harder the structural integrity of that snowball was such that it just punched right through because it hung on to its weight. And so, I mean, it's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it's a way to think about a bullet is like if it doesn't hold together, it's just going to poof like that snowball, but it's also going to do some really horrible, like surface damage to that animal and grievously wound it, but not kill it efficiently. Whereas that bullet that's going to hold together is going to expand. It's going to give you that quick, clean kill that is the desire of every hunter. You know, is we want that animal's death to be as quick as possible.
Now that partition, that's what it started out as, and then later on, kind of trickling down the Nosler thing, you get to 1984, and then the ballistic tip invention took place. Now, how does that differ?
Okay, so a little bit of history on the partition that leads up to the ballistic tip. So the partition, you know, for a long time, those were lathe turned individually and made on what's called a screw machine. And so it's very labor intensive, very slow process. They're very expensive bullet. It's worth the performance is worth it. But of course, Big John was never satisfied with just doing what's always been done. So he was looking for ways to improve and also to make different types of bullets because the partition is not necessarily the best target bullet or the best varmint bullet, you know. And so he was looking for ways to make bullets more efficiently, and so that's when he started looking at the process of impact extrusion, which is what we use today to make all of our hunting bullets and the partition as well. But that was what led him to create what was originally well, for a short period of time there was a bullet called the Zapito, which is a fun little trivia question that lasted a little while, and then that evolved into the solid base, which is very similar to what we have today in the ballistic tip, but it had a lead nose, unlike the ballistic tip, which is that polymer tip. And so the process for that is you impact extrude that jacket, and it doesn't have the partition in the middle, it just has a jacket. And so it's sort of similar to, you know, older cup and core bullet, but the jacket is much thicker. You get a lot more structural integrity out of that bullet because of the way that impact extrusion works. You start out with a solid copper slug. And actually, if you go to our YouTube page, watch the video quality first, because it's going to show you it's about 6-8 minutes. It's much better description of what I'm describing here. You're going to be able to see it in action.
We'll put that on our link tree. So if you go to our link tree, you'll be able to find it there, and we'll also post it the same day that this podcast comes out. We'll make a post, and we'll put the link on there too, so that you can find that.
So anyway, impact extruded bullet. So he started making the solid base. And the idea was to be a bullet that was great for varmint hunting, for target shooting, and then also for like medium sized game, you know, like a deer bullet. Because the partition is a great all around bullet. But like I said, that construction is so tough, it's kind of overkill for a lot of applications. And so John A. was tinkering around with the idea of creating a polymer tip, because creating a smooth, even, pointy nose on a lead bullet is one of the hardest parts of building that bullet, actually.
Really?
Just getting that lead into that nice smooth. And then they get beat up easily, you know, especially in the magazine and your rifle. If
Yeah,
you're
they're soft.
you know, you put soft. 2 or 3 down and then you fire a round, and then you take those out of your magazine, you'll see they're banged up. And so he had the idea of, hey, let's use a plastic tip for the bullet. It's going to be consistent because you're going to have those plastic tips made, and then every one of them is going to be the same. They're going to be nice and concentric, nice even tip. And so they figured out a way to insert that tip into the nose of the bullet, and that became the birth of the ballistic tip. And it was really designed to be a medium game bullet. We make 2 different kinds, and it's just jacket thickness different. So we have ballistic tip hunting, which is designed for medium-sized game, so deer, hogs, sheep, those kind of animals. And then there's a varmint design, which has a thinner jacket, which just expands much more
Quicker.
completely and rapidly. Yeah, and so that's designed for coyotes, prairie dogs, rock chucks, that kind of thing.
So it kind of gave you a way to just make it way more consistent and also dial in. It sounds like you're able to make more choices, whereas it sounds like the partition is the partition is the partition. But with the ballistic tip, you're able to just be a little bit more customized. Is that right?
Yep, a little bit. And then kind of that learning that they did with coming up with the ballistic tip and learning the impact extrusion process, that's really what set us up for the innovation that we've been able to make in all of our other hunting bullets as well. Just the things that they learned through that process led to the AccuBond and the AccuBond long range and our E-tip solid copper bullet, just all of the other bullets that we've been able to come out with.
Now, my hunting career, even when in the past when we had worked with Weatherby, all of my bullets have been AccuBond bullets. That's basically every deer that I've shot, except for maybe the my very first deer with a 30-30. I think from then on out, everything has been AccuBond, and for a lot of it has been the trophy grade, because I know that came out in 2009, and I've pretty much switched to that from that point on. Talk to me about the AccuBond, because now if you go to the Nosler website and you look up ammunition for, say, a 28 Nosler, you're gonna find the AccuBond, you're going to find the trophy grade AccuBond, you're going to find the trophy grade long range, and then you're probably also going to find like the partition. And the partition is just going to be a few bucks shy of the trophy grade AccuBond. So what can you kind of explain to me, if someone's going to the website and they're like, okay, I want to go buy ammunition, I'm inspired, okay, now I shoot a 270 Winchester, and I'm going to the website because you guys make ammo for not only your Nosler rounds, but also for, for basically every round. So someone goes there and they say, okay, what is this? What's the partition? Which one's the long range? Which one's the trophy grade? How do I know which one to use? Kind of walk through those different options for them that they're looking at right now if they're on the website.
Yep. Yeah. So if you look, in any given cartridge, we'll typically offer usually an AccuBond load, a partition load, AccuBond long range load, and then in some also expansion tip or a solid copper load as well. And sometimes you'll even have different weights available in the same bullet, maybe a 130, 140. So really the thing you want to think about is which bullet are you wanting to hunt with? And of course, when we got to go back to our terminology police a little bit, the bullet, a lot of people, when they say bullet, they're thinking of the whole cartridge.
Yeah.
Whereas when we're saying bullet, we're talking about just the projectile itself, And so when you're hunting for ammo, the first thing you want to think about is which bullet do I want to use and what game am I going to hunt? And you also need to be thinking in the back of your mind as bullet weight, because that's going to relate to the size of the animal as well. And so really it kind of depends. If you're going, solid copper, kind of people that want a copper bullet just know that that's what they want, or they live in a state or hunt in an area that requires it. And so then you're a little bit more limited. It's like, okay, you're going to have to go with the E-tip bullet. But everywhere else, you've got some options. And so really, if you want just one to kind of do it all, you can't beat the partition or the AccuBond. And a lot of people, I get this question a lot. You guys will say, oh, I've been using the partition forever and I love it and it shoots great out of my rifles, but I'm thinking about switching to the AccuBond. And I always say, well, why would you do that?
Leaving fish to go find fish. That's never
exactly. Yeah. And so I would never encourage anyone to I mean, if you want to try something new, then yeah, go for it. But the partition, there's a reason it's still around 75 years later, and that's because it just works, and it works just as good now as it did then. And it's just a great big game hunting bullet. You can rely on it and you know exactly what it's going to do, and it's got a proven track record. The AccuBond, same thing. Most of us here hunt with the AccuBond. It's just the great all around. You can't go wrong. It's consistently accurate out of a lot of rifles usually. And so ideally, if you have the time and the resources, you would buy a box of each and test them out in your rifle, see which one shoots best. But of course, not everyone has the time to do that. And so I would just always default to either the AccuBond or the Partition. If you're hunting larger game, there's also the ballistic tip is great. If you're hunting deer, hogs, medium-sized game where you want the little bit quicker expansion and it's not as big of an animal where you're having to penetrate through that heavy muscle and bone, the ballistic tip is a great go-to as well. So of those three, those are kind of the general purpose bullets. And so really, if you're looking for ammunition, just look at your cartridge. What is available? Which bullet types are available? What are you wanting to do with that bullet? And then find the weight and the bullet type that's going to match the game you're after.
So for if you were to hunt, let's give some examples. If you were going to hunt great big moose or a buffalo, which one would you probably go with?
I would go with either Partition, E-tip, or AccuBond.
Okay. And then if you were hunting pronghorn antelope and you were going to be making 400-yard shots, what would you go with? I
would look at either ballistic tip or AccuBond long range.
Yep.
And then third choice would be standard AccuBond. I mean, you're going to be splitting hairs, but there's a little bit of performance advantage. When you look at the AccuBond long range, you're going to get the AccuBond performance, but you're getting that in a higher BC bullet. And so if either you're going to be in a lot of wind or you're going to be taking longer range shots, that's where you're going to want to look at that AccuBond long range bullet.
This year I went whitetail hunting, and my favorite round, and we're going to have you on again because I want to go through all you and I knew we would be eating up most of the time, Gavin, because I'm just a nerd for this stuff. A couple points I want to make, though, is when you look at the Nosler rounds, so you've got the 22 Nosler, 26, 27, 28, 30, and 33. And a lot of those, I like the numbers that you guys use because they do kind of represent like a tie to, competitors. So the 27 Nosler is like a really, really, really mean 270. 22 Nosler would be like a really, really mean 223. The 26 Nosler is a lot for the 6'5 people. My favorite round ever, though, is the 28 Nosler. And, Savage also carries rifles chambered in the 28 Nosler. What I'm so blown away by is that it is, if you look at the numbers, you're looking at a 175 grain bullet, and you look at the speeds in comparison to everybody else, and everybody, that includes Weatherby, that includes, you name it. The speeds are always faster with Nosler. I mean, you can compare. I feel so confident just saying that out loud because I've looked at all the numbers, all the data, and speed does kill. Speed makes a big difference. And so in future podcasts as we go, we're going to have Mason on quite a bit where we're going to do just tuck in 10-minute segments in a bunch of podcasts where it's like today we're talking about the 22, today we're talking about the 26, 27, and then we're going to kind of create those into one-off videos as well and distribute those because I think it's important for people to know, like, here's the hunting application it's used for, here's what you'd be using that for. But the 28 Nosler, that 175 grain bullet, I will say this, because of ammo shortages and that sort of thing too, and because what I had accessible to me, I ended up with the long range. I believe the AccuBond trophy grade long range. I shot a whitetail. I was a little nervous at 40 yards. The devastation that I saw was border. The blood trail that I got was flat. It would blow your mind.
You could track it with your
eyes
closed.
Couldn't. Yeah. It was like it was startling, and that is what I've seen out of the 28 Nosler consistently for me for different things. So, I'm very happy with that. I shot it with the Buffalo, shot a 30 Nosler, and that was a startling kill as well. And then I used the trophy grade AccuBond, just a standard for the and that was in a 300 Winchester short mag, and that was on the moose, and that was startling, just the drop that happened. So I'm very impressed with the bullet so far. The speed is crazy, but actual hunting applications from moose, buffalo, and now whitetail deer, and seeing that just in the course of this past, that's just the hunts I used with this year. I'm just blown away that the devastation that happens and the blood trails that happen because of it. I mean, the moose didn't go anywhere. The buffalo went about 8 feet, and the deer somehow went 30 yards, but it was a terrible 30 yards for it. And you know, that's that. So I'm just very impressed with the ammunition as it sits. As far as I like to just talk about just the 28 Nosler, just because it's that's my near and dear one. So we'll start with that one today instead of the 22. But the 28 Nosler, it's kind of in that gap where if you look at the data on it, it's just a hair shy of, say, a 300 Weatherby Magnum or a 300 Winchester Magnum, because a lot of those are 180 grain bullets. Those are 175. But and then there's also, I believe, is there a 160 or 160? Yep. Yeah, as well in the 28 Nosler. So let's talk about that round. What the application is for. What I will say is, from my personal experience, it's a great all-around use round that you can use for anything.
Correct. Yep. That's exactly what it is. So the 28 was designed to be a high performance 7mm rifle cartridge that would fit in a standard length action. And it really has just carved out its own niche and has really become the king of all the Nosler cartridges for sure. And it's just immensely popular because it does just work so well. Like you've seen, you know, it is kind of that perfect balance of speed and bullet weight and the bullet diameter, sectional density, just all those things together. It's really great. And it's my favorite of the Nosler cartridges as well. I mean, it's very popular around here. We got a lot of guys that shoot the 28 because it just plain works.
It kind of ruined gun shopping for me, though, because once you have, it's like, well, if you want to get a new gun, you almost don't want to get the same round, but how do you not? And that's the whole point. I mean, I think the 160 grain, and this is off the top of my head, I believe it's over 3,300 feet per second or right there, Ev. So, I mean, that is a ridiculous speed for that size bullet. And I know it's over 3,000 feet per second when it's 175, which is also nuts because you look at like just a 300 Winchester short mag, and you're just under 3,000 feet per second. And people might not think 200 or 300 feet per second is a big difference, but that is a lot of stopping power and a lot of energy that's still carried down range, and it makes all the difference in the world. And again, if you can shoot the best and give yourself every advantage, and you're shooting 2 boxes a year, you're silly not to do it.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, don't get me going on the 28 Nosler. So if you are looking for an all-around, like I said, round just for just about anything, I would feel very comfortable shooting an elk with a 28 Nosler. I would feel very comfortable shooting a moose with a 28 Nosler, and I would feel extremely comfortable going as far as white-tailed deer. Just make sure you're in the vitals, because otherwise you don't hit a shoulder, because that shoulder's gone. But yeah, well. Mason, I want to thank you for coming on the Green Way Outdoors podcast and kind of sharing the information on Nosler. What you guys can watch for in the upcoming podcast as we go on through the weeks, we're going to have Mason come on and talk about specifically the 22 Nosler, specifically the 26 Nosler, specifically the 27, and kind of teach you about that ammunition. But the consistent thing that you're going to see is that speed kills and quality bullets matter. And if you're going to be shooting anything in your gun, make sure it's a Nosler. And keep in mind that while those rounds are important, if you already have a 270 Winchester that you got passed down from your grandfather, or you already have a 300 Winchester Magnum that's very important to you, Nosler makes ammunition for that as well. And we're also going to have to get into the rifles next time too, because they have a couple rifle options that are awesome. And if you're looking for the one all-around setup, that's going to be it. But Mason, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was fun talking about bullets, and yeah, we can spend lots of time doing this.
I really appreciate you coming on and talking about that stuff.